Yeah, I speak Portuguese at home.
I speak like four languages: Ukrainian, Polish, Russian, and English.
I speak three languages: Finnish, Arabic, and English.
My basic language is Kifulero, Swahili, and French.
I speak three languages, but I speak Assyrian at home.
I speak five languages: Wishar, Dazaga, Sara, Arabic, French, and English.
I speak Bangla at home.
At home, I speak only Albanian.
I speak Arabic at home.
I speak Spanish at home.
I speak three languages at home: Persian, Dari, Turkish.
I speak Fulani and French at home with my parents.
English and French are the official languages in Canada. However, there are more than 200 mother tongues or languages that are used in Canada according to Statistics Canada. These include Indigenous and immigrant languages. Canada gives a warm welcome for immigrants from different countries across the world. According to Statistics Canada, there are nearly 8 million Canadians who speak an immigrant mother tongue. However, most new immigrants face a big challenge in keeping their first language with their children, and only 28% of people with another mother tongue spoke only that language at home. In addition, according to the 1981 census, immigrant languages were passed on to only 41% of Canadian-born children. However, a quarter century later, in 2006, that number was better. Immigrant languages were passed on to 55% of Canadian-born children. It's very easy to lose a language over generations, and many parents worry about this.
I have two children. When we came here, they speak Arabic fluently, but when they attended the school, they found it easier to speak English with me, and I have this problem now. I can't communicate with them.
He told me, "Mommy, I can speak Arabic." When my parents call and they speak with him, he can't answer them fluently.
Losing languages is not just a problem for immigrants. There are 7,000 languages around the world, but half are endangered. The situation is even worse in Canada. UNESCO says 88 of Canada's indigenous languages could soon disappear, and only 3 are expected to survive. The source of this situation is residential schools and other government policies that forced indigenous people to give up their language. Starting in the 1840s, the government of Canada took indigenous children away from their families and sent them to residential schools. The government's goal was to take away indigenous culture and language. In these schools, children were not allowed to speak their language or practice their culture. Children experienced violence and abuse. The last residential school closed in 1996. Over the years, more than 150,000 indigenous children were taken from their families, homes, and communities. Most lost the ability to speak their first language. Another government policy is called the 60s Scoop. The government took indigenous children from their families and had white families adopt them. As a result, more than 20,000 children grew up far from their traditional homes and without their language or culture. As we can notice, languages are disappearing and people are losing this connection to their real identity. There are many reasons to keep our languages. Our language helps us to understand where we are from, to know our real identity, and to fulfill our responsibility to keep our culture alive. Keeping the languages helps us to have a strong connection with our family and gives us more opportunities in the future.
Having more than one language makes the brain active and more flexible. It also opens your mind and makes you see the world through different lenses.
As we are studying English at Moha College, and some of us face this problem, we decided to make a documentary about keeping the first language. And we did interviews with newcomers and experts about the importance of keeping the first language, and we got some solutions and advice.
Language is a big part of my culture and identity, so we had to learn it and respect it, because the language has been spoken by our ancestors, great emperors, and Jesus Christ.
Because it's part of my identity, it's important to me. My kids speak Persian too.
Language, it is important because it's more than a way to communicate with others. It represents the history, passion, and the soul of your culture.
Because in the language is everything. It's our understanding of the world and our place in it. It is who we are. It's our history, our way of understanding everything. Everything is in the language.
Beth Gray is a Mi'kmaq woman who was born in Nova Scotia. She was adopted by an English family in Ontario as part of the 60s scoop. As a result, she lost her native language and culture. Beth has been learning the Ojibwe language to reclaim her identity.
But growing up without my intact identity and language and culture, without the spirituality, without the art and dance and song, the value of it to me is so precious that I wanted to make sure my son had that. It was through the experience of learning the language, through song, through language classes, that I began to understand how we as a people think and feel and believe and understand our relationship to the land. It gave me words and concepts and understanding. I learned to pray in the language. I learned to speak in the language. I learned to sing in the language.
Mary Jane Black manages the International Languages Program for elementary students at the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. She believes in the value of first languages.
I think it's important for our global society today for children to be multilingual, to maintain their heritage, their culture.
It's given me an opportunity to look at the world through a different lens, through a Portuguese lens.
I want to keep my first language because I want to conserve my history, my traditions, my culture, and I also want to teach that to my daughter. And I know in the future she will have many advantages of a personal, social, intellectual, and educational life.
Being able to talk to grandparents and other family members is very important.
But this is why I think it's important for us to keep speaking Portuguese at home, and when we go back or have a visit to our parents, we can talk with them nicely.
I realized that it was very important to keep the other language. The number one reason was because my grandmother didn't speak English, so I could only communicate with her in Spanish.
Hanin is the mother of 2 children. As a newcomer, she's worried about her kids losing their first language.
We have family in my country and they speak our language, and one day we will go to visit them, and my kids they won't be able to speak with them like a grandmother, like their uncle and their grandfather, and that's very sad.
Being bilingual will help you to have better job opportunities.
I realized it would help me to get a job. It would be better. I would have a little bit more than other people who only spoke English.
Which sets them up for job opportunities in the future that many people will not have if they are not multilingual.
Studies have shown that being bilingual will benefit your brain in many ways too.
And it shows that children that are multilingual do much better in other subject areas and on test scores.
Because having a second language helps with executive functioning, which is how you take information in and kind of organize it. So you see kids, they have better attention because they know that this isn't important information, but this is important information because their brains are already trained to do that. In fact, there's even some research that tells us that people who have multiple languages, as they age, their brains stay fresher. So it's really good for the brain to have 2 languages.
We talked to experts about how to give children all of these advantages. And the advice is simple. Speak to your children in your first language.
Monica Knott is a speech-language pathologist who works with children in Hamilton.
Any of the parents that I work with, even children who have special needs and have more trouble learning, I say, speak your best language. So between the time a child is born till they hit about 5, the way the brain develops is they're listening, finding the patterns in the language, and then learning the language.
Nina kept her first language by speaking with her family.
I still to this day only speak Portuguese to my parents. I only speak Portuguese to them. And I think that has been the key to helping me continue to use my first language. So how do they teach me Portuguese? Well, just in interacting. It's a language that we speak at home.
Dua's family is from Iraq, but she grew up in Finland. Her father pushed her to use her mother tongue.
Like my father gave me many rules to how I can keep the first language. I can see Finnish movies or any kids movies, just only in Arabic movies, news is Arabic, just start speaking only Arabic at the home. And that's why I speak now very good Arabic, and my work back home in Finland, I translate Arabic to Finnish and Finnish to Arabic.
When parents have the same mother tongue, children are more likely to learn it. However, if the parents have different languages, children have the ability to grow up with 2 mother tongues.
This is Canada, and we have lots of families where there's one language with the mom and another language with the father. That's brilliant, because then the mom can speak the one language and the father can speak the second language, and the kids learn both languages really easily because they are getting a consistent model.
I think with my wife in particular, she speaks fluently with my son all the time at home. And so she speaks Mandarin, and she's Chinese, and they have conversations all the time. So it should be something that's consistent at home.
So using the family to keep that going, being proud of the language, like be proud.
In addition to using the first language at home, there are many ways to engage children with the language. Having fun with it at home, school, and in the community helps kids learn.
It's so important that teachers make it fun. Poetry, music, dance.
In order to learn the songs, you need to learn some language, because a lot of the songs are in the language. Yeah. And I would see their understanding open up and increase. And they would ask questions. So what does this word mean? What are we singing when we say this? And the understanding starts to grow. And for them, that was their entry point. That was their connection, the one that had meaning for them.
You're actually playing with the language with their kids instead of just using it as a way to talk with them, so that you start exploring it with them and helping them see how big it is. Dad would say, table, and Mom would say, no, mesa. And the kids would start to see that they were having like this little game about language, because language is really fun.
So for teaching my daughter, if I'm like teaching her about colors, I'd be like, this is red. It's also rouge. It's blue, but it's bleu.
In Hamilton, children can learn the first language at the International Languages Program at either school board.
We have 18 different sites where we deliver program. There are about 2,500 students, 2,700 students during the year, and then we also run a summer program where we have an additional 6, maybe 1,000 students that participate in the International Language Program. We're looking at 19 different languages that we offer. Most of my programs run on Saturday. I have a huge program at R.A. Riddell. It's an Arabic program, and there are 400 students there on Saturday.
Learning first language is a foundation to build future opportunities.
So having a good, strong first language, whatever language it is really important, because what that means is we have a really strong foundation. So with a foundation, you can build anything.
Also, It's the way to save the existence of our culture by transmitting the language and culture generation to generation.
So what a gift it has been to be able to grow up bilingual.
As parents, it's something we give to our children. It's also to ensure that their children, that the language lives on beyond us. If we don't share it, if we don't bring it forward, if we don't use it, if we don't give it to our children, then all of the understanding, all of the history, all of the meaning, the deep, rich meaning disappears.
Nowadays, the increasing number of endangered languages leads us to a big question, which is,
how will language affect the lives of generations to come?